Hey guys, tonight we descend deep into the mystery and mayhem of Hitler's missing treasure room, a place whispered about in spy circles, looter diaries, and post-war conspiracy forums. You'll need a strong stomach, a sharp eye, and maybe a flashlight that doesn't flicker when the air gets weird. You're going to crawl through crumbling tunnels and sift through half-truths buried in bunkers, and you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere unusual, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where these stories reach. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It's April 1945. Berlin is in flames, and the Allies are closing in. You walk through its broken bones, past walls shredded by artillery, and into the shadowy pit of the Führer bunker. The air is stale with mildew and the coppery tang of rusted metal. Concrete dust settles on your jacket like forgotten snow. Somewhere under your boots, someone once whispered about a treasure vault. But here's the thing, the blueprints don't match the real walls. That's your first red flag. You've got the original architectural plans of the bunker in your gloved hands, smuggled out by a defector before the war ended. They show something odd, a section below Hitler's private quarters that isn't on any post-war maps. A reinforced chamber, about the size of a midtown bank vault. No label, no stairs, just a suspicious air shaft that stops mid-tunnel. You reach that point now, crawling like a lizard on your belly through debris and twisted rebar. When you shine your flashlight into the shaft, there's nothing but concrete. Solid, sealed, or maybe hidden. Historians still argue whether this missing room ever existed. Some say it was a decoy, part of Hitler's paranoia-driven obsession with misdirection. Others believe it was where the Nazis stashed their last cache of stolen riches, gold, art, documents, and maybe even the Spear of Destiny. Yep, that one, the Roman spear that supposedly pierced Jesus' side and gives a world-conquering powers. Light bedtime reading, right. But tonight, it's just you and the bunker and that unnerving silence. One mainstream historical fact: in May 1945, Soviet forces were the first to capture the Führer bunker. They stripped it of anything remotely valuable: clocks, documents, pipes, before sealing it off. Stalin wanted secrets, and he got them. But when Western intelligence agents finally got a peek, weeks later, they noticed gaps. Something had been removed, or maybe it had never been there in the first place. You pass what's left of Hitler's personal quarters: a mold-eaten sofa, a chipped teacup, a faint smell like old cigars, and mildew-soaked wool. The ghosts here don't scream, they just wait. On the floor, near a burned desk, you spot something odd: a steel trapdoor, heavily scorched and long rusted shut. You place your hand on it, and the metal hums faintly, as if remembering something. You pry it open with a crowbar. It resists at first, then creaks like a wounded animal. Inside, just more darkness and stairs. This wasn't on any post-war recon map. You descend slowly. Each step creaks. The air thickens. The temperature drops by several degrees. You count 25 steps before your boot hits something flat, a concrete floor, but lined with iron rails, like something meant to carry heavy loads. The walls are lined with soot and something else. Melted wires. You run your hand along a panel. There's a switch, long dead, and a button labeled Not Fall. Emergency. You chuckle softly. Of course. At the far end of the chamber, your light catches something, a massive steel door, wheel lock sealed, like a submarine hatch. You approach, heart slowing, breath shallow. It's bigger than you expected. Definitely not meant for just supplies or panic provisions. But there's no handle, no way in. It's welded shut. And then you see the scratches, faint, but frantic. Someone tried to claw their way in or out. You lean in, and your breath fogs the surface. On the wall beside it, etched faintly into the concrete, a phrase in jagged German, Die Lüge lebt weiter. The lie lives on. Chills, full body goosebumps. You sit there, staring, heart echoing in your ears. Was this it? The missing treasure room, sealed forever, not by time, but by intention, a room designed to outlast the Reich, or to hide something it never wanted found. Fringe theorists go wild over this stuff. One swears that Hitler's body double helped smuggle documents out through this shaft days before the Russians arrived. Another claims that this room held not gold, but blackmail files, evidence that could bring down post-war leaders. You roll your eyes. But then again, history is always written by the ones who live long enough to edit the footnotes. You back away slowly, careful not to disturb anything. As you climb out, the shadows feel thicker, like the room itself is swallowing your presence, erasing your footprints. Outside, the Berlin sky is still dim, the city groaning like it's exhaling centuries of secrets. You cross back over rubble, but you glance once more at the bunker's entrance. The steel door, the missing chamber, the etched words. And you wonder what's a better hiding place than somewhere no one believes exists. Tomorrow, you head to the Alps. Rumor says Hitler had another vault up there, and this time, the safes weren't empty. You take a deep breath of frosty morning air as your boots crunch against gravel in the Bavarian Alps. The altitude bites at your lungs, but it's better than the claustrophobic weight of the bunker. Snow clings to the tips of your boots like powdered sugar. This place looks like a holiday postcard. If you squint past the ghosts, you're heading to one of Hitler's most infamous hideaways, his mountain stronghold, the Eagle's Nest, high on a craggy peak near Berchtesgaden. It looms like something out of a Bond villain's daydream. The stonework is sleek, the views panoramic, and the silence unnatural. Birds don't sing here. Too many whispers trapped in the rock. You take the brass elevator carved into the mountain, the same one diplomats and Nazi elite once used to sip champagne at 6,000 feet. It hums softly as it climbs, walls gleaming with polished brass. Some say the Allies bombed this place. They didn't. They wanted it for themselves, for photo ops. Maybe, or because even victory doesn't erase the allure of a throne. The door opens with a hiss, and you're inside. It's all echoes and ego. Marble floors, big windows, fireplaces that have burned nothing but legends since 1945. You pade softly across the room, fingers grazing the stone mantelpiece. It's cold to the touch, smooth, maybe even too clean, You check the safes first. There are two, cleverly hidden behind hinged wall panels. You tap the first, open its swings with a click, and a hollow cough of stale air. Empty. The second yields just a few moth-bitten folders and a cracked porcelain teacup. Who hides a teacup in a wall saves someone with secrets, or someone pretending to have them. Mainstream history says this place was more for show than strategy. A gift to Hitler on his 50th birthday. Designed by Martin Bormann himself. Hitler wasn't even that fond of it. He preferred the nearby Berghof, a cozier mountain retreat just down the slope. But visitors, they saw the eagle's nest and imagined power that touched the sky. Still, no treasure room here either, or at least not one marked, "Please open for gold." But you notice something in the stonework, a groove along the floor that doesn't match the surrounding tile. A pressure line. Your fingers trace it to a point where the wall subtly shifts under pressure. You lean. It gives. The hidden panel opens with a muted scrape, revealing a narrow stone passage behind the wall, an old smuggler's corridor or servant's crawl space. You duck inside. It smells like dust and ozone. The air tastes faintly metallic. Your flashlight flickers, which is always encouraging. You follow the tunnel downward, deeper into the mountain's belly. After about 60 meters, you hit something unexpected, a small, vault-like door. It's different than the sleek safes upstairs. This one's iron-bound, reinforced, and covered in soot. On the front, scrawled in chalk, a single word: verlegt, relocated. You smile despite yourself. Someone had a flair for drama. Inside, there's not much. A rusted chair, some wooden crates, mostly empty. But one crate is still nailed shut, the wood damp and swollen. You pry it open carefully. Inside, wrapped in layers of burlap and oilskin, is a bundle of documents. You pull one free. It crackles like potato chips. The paper's yellowed, brittle, but the handwriting is clear. Inventory sheets, lists of paintings, locations, weights, a name you recognize: Vermeer, another the lady in gold. This was no tea party. This was a smuggling log. The theory as the Allies advanced. Nazi officials moved art, documents, and valuables through a spiderweb of Roots trucks, trains, even locals bribed into silence. Some shipments were disguised as Red Cross cargo. Others vanished into the tunnels under Austria. A few never resurfaced. Historians still argue whether these records were part of a final relocation or a decoy planted to mislead looters. One thing's for sure, this crate wasn't meant to be found. You rifle through more papers. One refers to something called Raum 9 in a southern vault. No coordinates, so just that. Raum 9. It itches at the back of your skull like a half-remembered dream. You exit the tunnel an hour later, breath steaming, hair damp with cave air. Outside, the snow's thickened. The wind sighs through the trees. You pause on the overlook balcony, staring down at the valley. Somewhere below is the Berghof, now just ruins. You hike down toward the remains. The path is treacherous, littered with loose stones, and the kind of silence that makes you check over your shoulder. The Berghof is barely a foundation now, bombed and bulldozed after the war. But the cellar, it's still there. You drop into it like a burglar. It's damp, smelling of moss and thyme. You move through the rooms, wine storage, boiler room, servant's pantry, and find the remains of a steel cabinet. On its side is a chalked phrase, same script as before. Raum 9 verlegt an Lagerstelle K. That name again, Raum 9, transferred to Site K. It sounds like something from a Cold War spy manual. You exhale slowly, heart ticking up a gear. This isn't over, if anything. It's just beginning, because wherever Site K is, it wasn't found by the Allies. Not officially, and if these logs are real, the treasure didn't stay in Berlin, or even in these mountains. It moved, and tomorrow, so do you. You'll chase a train that allegedly carried tons of Nazi gold into Poland and vanished. You stand at the edge of a long-forgotten railway platform in Lower Silesia, Poland. The wind flutters through tall grass, brushing your legs like nervous fingers. Somewhere beneath your boots, iron tracks vanish into weeds and war-era legends. This is where things get murky, where facts thin out and folklore thicken like fog on a cold morning. You're here for the art, not just any art-stolen masterpieces by the cartload, looted during the Nazis' methodical plundering of Europe. Picture entire galleries packed into trains, each crate cradling a Rembrandt, a Michelangelo sketch, or maybe just a really moody still life. You kneel, brushing dust off a rusted rail. Somewhere down this line, the train disappeared. And not just a train. The train, known in fringe circles as the Gold Train. It supposedly departed Roswov in the final days of the war, carrying a motherlode of treasures looted from across occupied Europe. Gold, yes, but also priceless artworks, jewelry, and maybe even missing volumes from the fabled Amber Room. We'll get there. Be patient. But for now, you're chasing crates of stolen beauty. Mainstream historical fact: Hitler established the Einsatzstab, Reichsleiter Rosenberg, or ERR, an organized art-looting task force. They swept through France, the Netherlands, Belgium, Italy, wherever Nazi boots stepped. Canvases vanished, the Louvre ransacked, the Uffizi rifled. Even private homes weren't safe. If you were Jewish, or wealthy, or just unlucky, your family heirlooms were packed into trucks faster than you could protest. But here's where it gets surreal. Some say these trains, specifically one train, were bound not just for safety, but for something sacred to Hitler, the mythical last vault. You remember Raum 9, right? Yeah, that whisper again. The problem: no one's found the train. At least, not officially. You trudge along the tree line to an abandoned tunnel, half swallowed by moss. The stone arch crumbling like cake. A fringe tidbit worth knowing. In 2015, 2 Polish men claimed to have found it. They even filed a treasure claim with the government, causing a media frenzy. Ground-penetrating radar hinted at something massive, underground, shaped suspiciously like a train, but excavation nothing. Some dirt, some metal fragments, a lot of shrugs. Historians still argue whether the radar blip was a geological fluke or a train buried so well it's practically part of the landscape. Others say it was moved again, rerouted, or even buried in a booby-trapped tunnel designed to collapse if disturbed. Sounds dramatic. That's kind of the Nazis' thing. You squeeze into the tunnel anyway, because bedtime stories don't write themselves. The air grows colder as you descend. Moisture clings to the stone. It smells of iron and old diesel. You trail your hand along the wall and feel something etched into it. Numbers, coordinates, you jot 'em down, then duck lower. Because the ceiling's a bit too friendly with your skull, further in, you reach an iron gate locked, of course, but you spot a service door, rusted just enough to yield to a swift kick. Inside is a small room, empty but for a rotting wooden chair and what looks like a manifest. The paper is warped, illegible except for 2 lines. Verladung abgeschlossen, 28. März 1944. Loading complete, March 28th, 1944. The date haunts you. It's just days before Hitler's bunker became a tomb. This train was moving while Berlin was burning. And if the manifest is real, it wasn't just carrying paintings. You think about what it means to steal beauty. The Mona Lisa didn't smile for Nazis, but they tried to own her anyway. Families lost portraits of ancestors, religious relics, handwritten symphonies, one emotionally immersive moment. Imagine you're 9, and the piano in your home disappears one night, taken by men in gray uniforms. 40 years later, you hear it again in a German museum, mislabeled, its ivory keys still echoing your childhood. That happened more than once. You climb out of the tunnel slowly, above ground. The forest feels too quiet, like it's listening. You walk the perimeter, checking old vents and cracked service hatches. Near a collapsed loading dock, something catches your eye, a piece of canvas, buried under soil and root. You dig it free gingerly, reverently. It's a painting, or was water damaged and torn. It's barely legible now. Just the edge of a figure, a hand maybe, holding a fruit or a letter. In one corner, a barely there signature Cranach. You freeze. Lucas Cranach the Elder, a Renaissance painter whose works were systematically looted by the Nazis. Many are still missing. You wrap it carefully. This isn't treasure, this is a time capsule, a splinter of history that survived fire, war, and greed. And now it's in your hands. But here's the thing, if this train existed, and this painting was part of it, then we're not chasing fairy tales. We're tracing breadcrumbs. And where do breadcrumbs usually lead? To something hungry. You start piecing together a theory. What if the train was never meant to reach its destination? What if it was always intended to vanish? That means it didn't just carry valuables. It carried the kind of leverage a losing regime might trade in desperation. You make your way back to the village, boots muddy, head buzzing. Tomorrow, you head to the Merkers salt mine, one of the few places where something was actually found. You'll descend into its cold, glittering depths, and maybe catch a glimpse of what was really missing. Because even when gold is found, the story is never quite finished. You descend into darkness, again, but this time, it's colder, not the damp, earthy cold of the Polish tunnels, but something bone deep and ancient. You're in the Merkers salt mine in central Germany, a place that once sparkled with mineral wealth, but now echoes with a different kind of history. Your boots crunch across salt-dusted floors. The tunnel ahead glows faintly, lit by flickering bulbs that seem 2 flickers from death. You breathe in air that smells like crushed stone and something faintly metallic, like blood on a penny. Back in April 1945, American troops stumbled on this mine, and what they found could fill a dragon's lair. Here's your mainstream historical fact: over 100 tons of gold bullion. massive stacks of Reichsbank currency, crates upon crates of artwork stolen from across Europe, Michelangelo sketches, Botticelli originals, even personal valuables, wedding rings, family lockets, passports confiscated from concentration camp victims. The mine was a twisted treasury, a final vault as the Third Reich unraveled. You run your fingers along the tunnel wall as you walk. This place is vast miles of subterranean corridors carved by miners over centuries. It's easy to see how someone could squirrel away a few extra crates in here and no one would know for decades or ever. Then comes the fringe tidbit, one of the salt mine's chambers, Chamber 8H, to be exact, was sealed and logged as empty by the Allies, but post-war records show that before sealing, soldiers observed a side corridor that appeared to lead nowhere. It was bricked up, hastily, just days after discovery. Why bureaucratic oversight? Or maybe a silent order to leave well enough alone. You find a fork in the passage. The left route is clearly marked Tour Exit. You take the right, obviously. It narrows as you walk. The walls close in. Salt crystals glint in your flashlight beam like crushed diamonds. Eventually, you reach the supposed dead end, a bricked-up wall, cruder than its surroundings. You knock gently, hollow. You pause, that feeling again, like someone just whispered your name in a room full of statues. Then you see it, a tiny flaw in the mortar, a crack. You work at it slowly, carefully, until the brick gives way. Then another, enough to peer through. It opens into a small chamber, no bigger than a studio apartment. The air is thick with stillness. Inside crates, 4 of them, unmarked. You slide inside, brushing the dust from the nearest lid. It creaks as it opens, the hinges stiff with time. Inside documents, thousands of them, inventory ledgers, receipts, coded telegrams. One in particular catches your eye, an intercepted message dated April 2nd, 1945, referencing a priority shipment to Realm 9. That ghost again. You pull out another paper. It's a crude map, possibly hand-drawn, showing a triangle of locations, Merkers, Linz, and a spot simply labeled Kammer Schwarz. The black chamber. Linz triggers something in your memory. That was supposed to be the crown jewel of Hitler's vision, the Führer Museum. He dreamed of turning his hometown into an art capital to rival Paris or Rome. Thousands of stolen works were funneled there, or so the plan went. The museum was never built, but the art, it definitely traveled. Historians still argue whether the Linz project was a genuine passion or just a cover for mass theft. Either way, the paperwork you're holding suggests the mine wasn't just a treasure stash, it was a logistical hub, a pit stop before the real hiding places. You examine one last crate. This one's different, heavier. You pry the lid open and immediately choke on the chemical tang inside. Beneath protective layers of gauze and waxed paper, you find rows of glass slides. Each one contains a photographic negative. You hold one to the light. A painting clear as day, oil on canvas, Baroque in style, but you don't recognize it. You check another, a sculpture, then a handwritten catalog in German and French, describing restoration techniques, smuggling routes, and fake provenance papers. Someone wasn't just hiding these works, they were planning how to reintroduce them into the world. Cleaned and laundered, emotion kicks you in the ribs, because this isn't just about gold and glory, it's about erasure. about turning real memories into ghost stories. Families lost their pasts so someone could hang a pretty thing above a marble fireplace. You sit down for a moment, overwhelmed, and let the silence press in. Then, a sound, a faint trickle, water. You look up and notice a damp crack spidering through the chamber ceiling. This place isn't stable. Time is eating it. You gather what you can: maps, documents, a few photos, and slide back out. Above ground, you squint into the sunlight. Your eyes sting. The world feels too loud, too fast. You sip from your water bottle and think about what comes next. You have names now, locations. One of them, Lynn's, is calling to you like a siren from a sunken museum. But it's not the only one. That phrase from before Kammer Schwartz won't leave you alone. The black chamber. No one knows where it is. At least, no one who talks about it. But you've got a theory, based on the papers, based on the route the artwork took, based on where the ghosts still whisper loudest. And it starts with a castle. Not just any castle, one tucked into the Austrian hills, where rumor says the Nazis built secret vaults underneath a centuries-old fortress. The question is, did anything make it there before the war ended? You shoulder your bag, documents rustling like dry leaves. Another night, another buried secret, and deeper in the Alps, something waits in silence. You arrive at the edge of Austria, like you're stepping into a postcard rolling green hills, snow-dusted peaks, and a castle perched so precariously on a rocky cliff that you half expect it to sigh and tumble down like a movie set. But no camera crew here, just birdsong, wind through trees, and centuries of secrets nestled in the cold stones of Werfenstein Castle. This isn't the kind of castle tourists line up to see. It's remote, half crumbling, and shut off from public access thanks to a tangle of legal disputes and restoration plans that seem suspiciously endless. Still, it's the name that draws you, because buried deep in the documents you pulled from Merker's, scrawled in rushed pencil on the edge of a map, are 4 shaky letters, WSCH, and a string of numbers that perfectly matches this castle's old wartime inventory log. You reach the gates near dusk. The metal's rusted, the hinges groaning like something from a haunted house soundtrack. You step through and feel it immediately, that airless stillness. The kind that doesn't just suggest abandonment, but anticipation, like the place has been waiting. Inside, the stone corridors breathe cold against your skin. Your flashlight paints shadows along walls that were once lined with medieval weapons and velvet drapery. Now it's just stone, dust, and echoes. Remember how Hitler had a thing for grand architecture? Well, here's your mainstream historical fact. Werfenstein Castle was once used by the SS as a training site, not for battle, but for ideology. It was home to occult-leaning groups tied to Himmler's warped vision of an Aryan spiritual rebirth. Yeah, they were into that stuff too. But while tourists look at its turrets and think quaint, you're tracking something more logistical, because castles like this were often repurposed by the Nazis as way stations, quiet places to move sensitive cargo in the fog of war. The map you found back in the salt mine showed a rough corridor carved beneath this place. Not original, but added during the war. The stone is newer, smoother. You find the hatch hidden behind an old wood panel that creaks like it's embarrassed to be found. The metal beneath your boots turns to earth, and then back to stone. The corridor drops into a man-made shaft. It's tight. You crouch, slide, and land in a darkened chamber below. You flick on your headlamp. The beam cuts through centuries of stillness. Here's the emotionally immersive moment. Imagine a room where no one has breathed for 80 years, where air has just waited. Inside, the smell hits first dry, musty, but threaded with a hint of old oil and something medicinal. You recognize it immediately. Varnish. This was a vault. Crates again, but smaller this time, more precise, like someone took time arranging them. You brush dust off one and find a familiar stamp, ERR, the Nazi art looting squad. You pop the crate open. Inside is a bust, marble, unmistakably Bernini. His signature curls and dramatic expression frozen in alabaster. This piece alone could fetch tens of millions or more. But that's not the real weight you feel, because here's the kicker. Taped to the underside of the lid is a faded envelope. Ohnet für Linz, sichern bis Ende. For Linz, secure until the end. Inside the envelope, not money, not a list, but a photograph grainy, black and white, showing a room filled with more art than you can process. Statues, tapestries, rolled canvases, and one peculiar piece in the back, barely visible, square, wood-framed. It glows oddly. The amber room, no joke. You blink, unsure if your eyes are playing tricks. But you've seen this exact pattern in history books. Amber panels, gold trim. Could it be real? Historians still argue whether the amber room was destroyed in the bombing of Königsberg, or if it was whisked away at the last moment. Some claim the Soviets reconstructed it entirely from scratch. Others whisper that the original never truly burned. And if that photograph is what it looks like, you pocket it, hands trembling, not from fear, from awe. You feel like a thread is finally pulling tight between all these disconnected rumors. The train, the salt mines, Rom 9. It's not one mystery. It's one machine with scattered gears across Europe. A sudden sound makes you flinch. It's nothing, just a drip. But your heart sprints anyway. You search further. More crates, more artifacts. Some sealed, some damaged by time and moisture. One holds a sketchbook filled with surreal illustrations, signed with a name you don't recognize. Another contains a broken sculpture that looks Egyptian, its features sharp and regal, even in ruin, possibly a piece stolen from the Louvre's Egyptian wing. Then, tucked behind a barrel, you find a locked metal box the size of a lunch cooler. Heavy. The lock is brittle. You pop it open. Inside, a series of blueprints. They show a structure buried beneath what looks like the Alps, far larger than any storage site you've seen. Labeled Projekt Schwarz, the Black Project. And in the corner, Zugang durch Raum 9. Access through Room 9. That cursed name again. You scan the papers, heart thumping now, because this isn't just a vault. It's an entire underground facility, seemingly untouched, unknown, and sealed. You rise slowly, suddenly aware of how alone you are down here, and how loud the silence has become. Back above ground, you step out into the cool alpine air. The stars have appeared, faint and crystalline. Your breath puffs out in clouds. You feel small and somehow, impossibly, closer to something massive. One last thing before you leave. You check your map again. The coordinates for the Black Chamber. It points to somewhere deeper in Austria, at the edge of the Tyrolean Alps, an old industrial site with no road markers and a history scrubbed clean after 1945. You'll go there next, but for now, you sit on a stone ledge, letting the night calm you. The castle behind you groans in its ancient bones. The photo of the amber room burns a soft hole in your coat pocket, and deep beneath your feet, one last crate remains unopened. You didn't touch it, because some secrets need time, and some stories aren't quite ready to be told. You're deep in the Tyrolean Alps now, where the mountains loom like sleeping giants, and the road narrows to a gravel thread. Your GPS gave up miles ago. Cell service, forget it. It's just you, the crunch of tires on stone, and the feeling that something ancient, something dangerous waits beneath all this rock. The location isn't marked on any modern map, but from the coordinates tucked inside that Werfenstein blueprint, you know exactly where to stop a forgotten site near an old rail spur, where trees grow wild around concrete ruins. Faded signage suggests it was once a mining operation, or maybe a storage depot. No one seems to remember. You pull your scarf up against the cold. It smells of pine and old smoke. Here's your mainstream historical fact during the last months of W2 Nazi engineers began building massive underground facilities in Austria and Bavaria, codenamed Project Riese or Giant. These structures were meant to house weapons factories, command centers, and possibly even bunkers for Hitler and his most trusted officers. Most were abandoned incomplete. But here's where it gets weird. The spot you're standing on, it wasn't part of Riese. It doesn't appear in any Allied surveillance reports or post-war inventories. Yet the layout matches the Project Schwarz blueprints: perfectly angled shafts, circular ventilation chambers, and a large, reinforced entrance labeled only as Raum 9. You find the entrance behind a rusted sheet of camouflaged steel, buried beneath a curtain of moss. The latch is broken. It yawns open like the door to a tomb. You flick on your headlamp. Inside, the temperature drops by 20 degrees. Your breath fogs. The walls here are smoother than expected, reinforced with steel. Not timber, no signs of flooding or collapse. Someone built this place to last. The hallway descends gently. You count your steps: 30, 40, 80. At around 100, you reach the first anomaly, a large steel door, nearly 5 inches thick. It's unlocked. The handle groans as you turn it. Inside, a room filled with abandoned machinery, gauges with German labels, a generator, several large crates, all empty. But what grabs your attention is a mural, hand-painted on the far wall, swirling amber patterns that echo something familiar. The Amber Room, or an imitation. Fringe tidbit times certain post-war rumors claim that the Nazis weren't just obsessed with gold and art, they were also interested in building a cultural time capsule, a place to preserve the so-called achievements of the Reich in case the war was lost. A sanctuary, or maybe a shrine. You step deeper into the chamber. There's no dust, no mold. It's like someone left only yesterday. But it's the silence that unnerves you most. Even underground, there should be sound drips, air movement, the groan of earth. But here nothing, total stillness. You turn a corner and find another passage, narrower, lined with what looks like electrical conduit. Signs above the door say Zugang Realm, 9 Access Room 9. Your pulse picks up. You push through. Emotion hits like a wave of cold water because the room beyond defies expectation. It's massive, vaulted, and filled with shelves. Not crates, not piles, shelves. Each one neatly labeled in crisp, stenciled Gothic font. Scrolls, paintings, books, sculptures. Some covered in tarps, others glowing faintly under protective glass. There's even a row of musical instruments, violins, cellos, flutes perfectly preserved. You walk in a daze. The room stretches on, deeper than you thought possible. The acoustics are uncanny. Your footsteps vanish instantly, swallowed by soundproofing. You pull back one tarp and find a painting gold leaf and cobalt pigment. You don't recognize the artist, but the style suggests a Northern Renaissance master. Another label, Sonder Catalog Linz, 23B. So this was it, the end point. The museum was never built, but the collection, it's here. And then, the emotionally immersive moment that sends your brain tilting a child's toy. A handmade wooden horse, tucked on a lower shelf among framed photographs. Black and white portraits of families, some smiling, some stiff and formal, each one tagged with a number. You realize with a jolt, these weren't just art objects. They were keepsakes. You sit for a moment, not from exhaustion, but reverence and anger. How do you weigh beauty against the horror it was buried with? Historians still argue whether the Nazis hid these items to preserve their twisted dream of culture, or simply to deny the world what they couldn't keep. Either way, the theft feels raw, even now. You move deeper. Eventually, you reach a section cordoned off by heavy steel wire. Behind it, 5 sealed vaults, reinforced doors, each marked with a code. The last one bears a scratched nameplate, Bernsteinzimmer, the Amber Room. You touch the cold steel. There's no handle, no keyhole, just a blank keypad. You check your notes. One of the blueprints included a 6-digit string. You type it in, one number at a time. The door clicks. Inside, your headlamp beam stabs through thick dust. What you see stops your breath. Amber, golden, resinous, glowing in your light. Panels lining the walls, shattered in places but unmistakable. Carvings, reliefs, a mirror frame. It's real, or what's left of it. Not whole, not pristine, but definitely not ash. The air smells sweet, almost like dried fruit. You close your eyes, trying to imagine what it looked like before time gnawed at it. Soft cliffhanger time tucked in the far corner of the vault is a wooden crate, sealed with wax. It's the only thing untouched by decay. You approach. The wax bears a mark, a symbol you haven't seen before. An eagle with an unfamiliar shield. You touch it. The lid stirs, and suddenly, the ground rumbles, just slightly, just enough to send dust falling in sheets from the ceiling. You freeze, then retreat. You don't open it. Not yet. Because whatever it is, it wasn't meant to be found. And besides, you're not alone anymore. There's a fresh footprint in the dust behind you. You're frozen, mid-breath, eyes locked on that single footprint in the dust. It's recent, clearly defined tread marks, still crisp at the edges. Your own prints lead in, but this one, it leads out. Someone was here, or still is. The silence roars louder now, That thick, unnatural stillness from before, not so comforting anymore. You slowly back away from the sealed crate, yeah. The one with the weird wax seal and the ominous rumble, and scan the room. Nothing moves, but you swear the air's changed, like someone exhaled just behind your ear. Time to go. You retrace your steps through the amber room vault, past the vitrines of stolen masterpieces and the soft glint of forgotten heirlooms. Each piece feels heavier now, not just in mass, but in memory. These aren't trophies, they're echoes of loss, pillaged paintings, looted violins, wedding rings that never made it home. Here's your mainstream historical fact for this round after Dubuis. The Allied Monuments men recovered over 5 million cultural items stolen by the Nazis. Yet thousands remain missing to this day. Some were destroyed, yes, but many hidden, moved, hoarded by individuals who knew exactly what they were worth, and not just in dollars. Fringe theory incoming. A few researchers claim that the Nazis created a list called the Schwarze Liste, the Black List, a log of items so valuable, so ideologically sacred, that they were hidden in Layer 2 vaults, places even high-ranking officials didn't know existed. You might just be standing in one right now. You reach the corridor again, your headlamp flickering a little more than you'd like. The door creaks behind you. That subtle sound again, like gravel shifting under pressure. You stop, listen, nothing. Then you hear it, a whisper, or maybe your brain wants it to be a whisper. Either way, you don't wait to investigate. You move, fast but quiet, back through the main storage chamber, past the eerie mural of swirling amber, and up the slope toward the surface. The temperature rises slightly with each step. The pressure in your chest slowly releases. You break out into the pale morning light. Fog curls around the treetops, like ghosts deciding whether to stick around or head home. Your breath fogs, mixing with the mist. Behind you, the entrance to Realm 9 sits quiet and dumb, as if it didn't just show you the most surreal art gallery in modern history. But there's no time to bask. You're not the only one who knows this place exists anymore. And that crate, that one sealed with the mark you couldn't identify, it still calls to you, quietly, insistently. Back in your makeshift camp, you sit down with the blueprint documents. There's one you hadn't looked closely at before, tucked beneath the rest. It's not a map, it's a log, a delivery record. 5 shipments marked unverkäuflich, not for sale, each one coded, but you can decipher a few based on your finds: amber fragments, Bernini sculpture, scrolls from Krakow. A note beside the last line simply says, transported via Schwanenstein rail. No date, no destination, but you remember the train logs from Merkers. One of the trains listed in that ledger, never accounted for. Here's the scholarly debate. Some experts argue that no such ghost train existed, that it's pure post-war myth, like Nazi moon bases or the Holy Grail stashed in Antarctica. But others point to that one anomaly, a train scheduled to depart Linz in March 1945, loaded with sealed cargo. It left, but it never arrived. Rumors say it vanished into the mountains. Literally, you cross-check the coordinates and realize something strange. There's an abandoned railway tunnel just 2 miles east of Realm 9. No modern access roads, no mentions in current Austrian infrastructure reports. It's just there. You hike through the underbrush, ducking under fallen trees and following rusted tracks that snake through the woods like veins. Eventually, you find the tunnel, half covered in dirt and moss, sealed by a rusted metal gate. You pry it open. Inside, cool air, sharper than outside, the scent of iron and rot. You walk slowly. The beam of your flashlight stretches only so far. Then something massive looms into view. A train car, not derailed, not damaged, just stopped, completely intact, sitting quietly on the rails as if waiting for orders. You climb aboard. The doors groan but open. Inside, the car is pitch black. You swing your light and gasp. Crates, stacks of them, sealed, labeled. One reads, Pompeius ivory panel, do not uncrate. Another stolen from Met NYC, return upon orders only. Wait, what, you blink? That's impossible. The Metropolitan Museum of Art didn't report a theft like this in 1945. Unless you check the manifest again. The item was never part of any exhibit. It was in the archives, quietly loaned in 1939 and never returned. This isn't just wartime loot. It's decades-deep cultural laundering. You open a few more. Your breath hitches at each one. A jade mask that looks Mesoamerican. A Russian Fabergé egg. A carved Assyrian tablet. Each perfectly preserved. Then, at the end of the car, a smaller crate sits by itself. You already know what it is. The wax seal matches the one back in Realm 9, but this one is cracked, just slightly. You ease the lid open. Inside a black velvet bundle. You unwrap it. It's not gold, not jewels. It's a journal, bound in dark leather. Smells like oil and age. The first page reads, Project der letzte Blick, the last glance. And below that, initiated by Dr. Victor Kyle, 1944. Kyle. You've heard that name. He was Himmler's art acquisition specialist, but also something else, a philosopher, a true believer in the myth of blood memory, that objects could hold the spirit of their makers. Creepy, right? You flip through. The journal is filled with diagrams, objects paired with symbols, descriptions of soul binding, even a theory about an artifact called the Whispering Mirror, supposedly once owned by Catherine the Great. It was said to reflect not your face, but your fate. You pause, hand on the page. Then you hear it again. That sound, a shuffle, a breath. You snap the book closed. Whatever you just opened, it opened something else, too. And this train, it hasn't reached the end of its tracks. Not yet. You hold the journal like it might bite. The leather is warm now. Or maybe that's your imagination running wild. Either way, it feels alive in your hands, like something watching you back. You exit the train car slowly, each creak of the metal floor echoing into the tunnel's stale darkness. There's no doubt now this isn't just about art or treasure anymore. This is something deeper, stranger, something that wasn't meant to be rediscovered. You move toward the light at the mouth of the tunnel, the fresh air cutting through the fog of old secrets. But as you emerge, you get that sensation, again the one you've had since Realm 9, that you're not alone, that someone or something has been following your footsteps, always staying just out of sight. Let's ground ourselves again for a moment. Mainstream historical fact: many Nazi officials were deeply obsessed with the occult. Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS, even established a division called the Ahnenerbe, tasked with researching mystical origins of the Aryan race. ancient runes, and sacred relics. The division sent expeditions to Tibet, Scandinavia, and North Africa, all in search of objects imbued with symbolic power. They believed, earnestly or at least politically, that certain artifacts could protect, control, or even grant dominion over the world. And here you are, cradling what might be one of their final creations. Now here's a delicious little fringe tidbit. Some post-war researchers believe that Project Der Letzte Blick was a secret initiative to create not just a repository, but a spiritual archive, a kind of alchemical museum, where objects wouldn't just be stored, but altered, charged, in their words through rituals, to hold fragments of memory and intent, like Horcruxes, but less wand-waving, more candles and chanting in bunkers. You flip open the journal again, thumbing toward the final entries. Drawings appear a floor plan that resembles Raum 9. Notes in a looping hand. Subject transferred. Containment insufficient. Mirror unstable. Below it, a red wax seal, half flaked away, stamped with that eagle crest. The next page is stuck. You don't open it. Some mysteries sleep better that way. And still, your thoughts circle back to that first crate, the one hidden in the deepest chamber of Raum 9. You hadn't opened it. Not yet. But now that you've seen its twin on the train and touched the journal that may have been inside, it's clear they're connected. One is the start of the story, the other the punctuation mark, the heavy period at the end of a sentence too strange for history books. Scholars still argue whether these were just fantasies, delusions of power-hungry men in a crumbling regime. But what if they were more than that? What if the treasure wasn't just gold, or amber, or paintings? What if the treasure was knowledge? And what if that knowledge was dangerous? You return to Raum 9 the next day, moving carefully, now with fresh gloves and more caution. The footprint from before is gone, or maybe it's been deliberately smudged. Inside, everything is still, unchanged, almost too unchanged, like a set piece waiting for its actor. You approach the crate. The wax seal glistens slightly under your light. You press a finger to the symbol. The wax crumbles. Inside, not a mirror, not gold, but a stone slab, flat, polished, roughly the size of a laptop screen, etched with swirling lines that shift under your gaze like oil on water. The journal mentioned this too, the eye stone, allegedly carved in ancient Babylon, rumored to show visions if placed in moonlight. You feel it humming, faintly. You don't wait for the moon. You rewrap it and reseal the crate with fresh wax. Some doors are better left half shut. As you exit for the last time, you pause at the entrance to the underground chamber and leave something behind a slip of paper with only one word written in black ink. Remember, you climb back up into the light, a little older than when you started, a little less sure of what's real and what's not. You've held history in your hands, and maybe something else, too, something that didn't want to be remembered. Now here's the soft cliffhanger. You never told anyone about the second crate, or the train car, or the eye stone, but someone knows, because a week later, a package arrives at your door. No return address. Inside, a single item, that child's wooden horse, the same one from Raum 9. It rocks slightly when you set it down, and when you turn around, your journal, the one you left in your pack, zipped shut, is open to the final page. But you never opened it, did you? The air softens now, like the hush after snowfall, and your breath slows, steady and deep. You've wandered through shadowed vaults and sunken trains, pressed your fingertips against forgotten art, and brushed the edges of something far older than war or memory. Whether the treasure you found was real, or just the kind that lingers in dreams, you'll carry it now in small ways. Maybe it's the glow of amber in your mind's eye, or the soundless echo of your own footsteps in a room that shouldn't exist. Maybe it's just the weight of knowing that some stories will never truly end, they only wait. Wait to be opened or left sealed. Let the fog of this tale settle into stillness around you. Let each breath loosen the grip of the strange, the uncanny, the what if. You are warm now, far from cold stone corridors, far from crates that whisper and journals that watch. You are safe, and the only sound left is the soft hum of your own quiet thoughts. So rest easy, explorer of hidden rooms and haunted history. You made it back. You always do. The story is over. See you tomorrow night. Sweet dreams.